Folks, we back another Tuesday, another exciting day. Creative Financing with JB, your motivation expert, has brought you something new. As we know, this is home ownership month, but we got to remember health is wealth. Staying healthy, being healthy, knowing how to prepare yourself. So when you're going to reach success, you have to have some discipline, some health strategies. So we go through. So I brought my expert today for Miss Ramona Phillips, as she is going to walk us down some healthy strategies that we might want to start thinking about. We want to start considering, because if we're going to go to that next level, we have to prepare ourselves for what we're doing. We have to think about eating right, resting. How do we get over anxiety? How do we get through the traumas of our life and all that stuff? So I'm going to just take a couple more minutes and let Miss Phillips introduce herself to you and give you a little bit about her.
Okay.
Phillips?
You ready? Okay.
Yeah, I'm ready.
I'm Ramona Phillips, the Healthy Mind Strategist. I usually introduce myself on social media as the Healthy Mind Strategist because God gave me that some time ago, trauma defeated, and the Healthy Mind Strategist. I'm also the CEO and founder of Trauma Defeated LLC. Now, you want to know a little bit more about me, right? So anyway, I'm a best-selling author, best-selling co-author, right? I'm also a speaker, a presenter. I'm on Reach Gospel Radio every Saturday mornings at 6:45 a.m. Right, and I'm a storyteller, and God blesses me to go and tell my stories. But a lot of people don't realize that being a speaker or an author or a storyteller or even knowing who I am. I didn't know that many years ago when I was 31 years old, when I finally decided to get into some therapy and get some help because I was in a very toxic marriage and couldn't understand why I felt like I could not get out of that marriage. But let me tell you a bit more about myself. Um, I started my first 5 years of life living with my grandparents on my dad's side, who took me to church. My dad was very young. He was an alcoholic. My mom was about 17 years old when she gave birth to me. So they were a teenager couple. So the bottom line is they split up very early. But the blessing in that was that my grandparents were Christians and they took me to church. So I believe truly for the first 5 years of my life, um, I've definitely, believe that the Holy Spirit was already working on me because the God knew what I was about to face after that, right? Because I was with my grandparents, but I'm living with them. But then my mom came to get me just before it was time, sometime before it was time for me to start school. Is it okay to keep going?
Absolutely. You
Okay.
talk. I'll listen.
Okay, so my mom came to get me sometime when it was time for me to start. I mean, for me to start elementary school or kindergarten. And anyway, didn't go to kindergarten. I was frustrated. I was annoyed about that because by that time my mom had another little girl. We were only 15 months apart, and she went to. I'll never forget when my mom took us to school. She went to this really cool classroom with all of these colors, and I'm like, okay, school gonna be all right. Then it was time for me to go to my class. And my class didn't look nothing like her class. I remember being angry, like I felt like I was cheated. I was gypped.
Right.
What's going on? She go to play and this down to business for me. So anyway, I do, I remember these little, I remember these tidbits of things. But sometime after that, I just experienced trauma at a very early age. As a matter of fact, let me go back a little bit more because before I went to school, I was hit by a car at about the age 3 or 4. And
Wow.
I never forget, I got to talk about this toxic stuff and
Mhm.
how we get to where we are and how we struggle sometimes with our emotions. So anyway, my dad was alcoholic. I said that. And I don't know where my mom was at the time, but my dad took me to the hospital.
Mhm.
And I never forget, I was hit by a white convertible, right? Many years ago. And I remember hollering and screaming as I watched the doctors stitch up the middle of my hand.
Mhm.
I
Wow.
remember I'm maybe 3 or 4 years old, so that was traumatic for me, and it had to be really bad because I still have the mark in the middle of my hand even today, and that was a long, long time ago. So I remember my dad was not a healthy support for me. I actually remember my dad telling me to shut up one time. So
Mhm.
obviously he probably had been drinking. I
Mhm.
started to develop phobias at a very young age. If we went across a bridge, I would duck down. I remember telling my daddy, so I started noticing some things about the drinking about my dad. I guess I noticed he was changing when
Mhm.
he was drinking. So I remember, I mean, I'm going to say I was 4.
Mhm.
Remember one day saying, Daddy, please don't drink. Daddy, please don't drink. That's a lot of pressure for a very young girl trying to understand,
Absolutely.
make sense out of some things for a toddler. I remember doing also sometime during that time. All of this happened before I turned 5 years old. Um,
Mhm.
I was burned by a pot of hot coffee.
Mhm.
I was only 15 months old at that time, so I know I'm kind of jumping all over the place. I was 15 months old at that time, so the body remembers. I'm sure that was very traumatic. I can't, at that time, couldn't tell anybody, oh, a pot of hot coffee fell on me, and my mother was in labor, and that's when she gave birth to my sister. So I know
Mhm.
I'm jumping all over the place, but I'm going to just tell these little tidbits of where this trauma came from, okay? Uh,
Mhm.
Somewhere along the line, I also began to see my mother. No, my mother went in a burning house. Now, once again, I'm like 4 years old or 3 years old. I realized my parents, or I mean, my grandparents, the neighbors hollering and screaming, glasses breaking out of the windows. Nobody is coming to get me and comfort me. I hear yelling my mother's name. Mary Alice went in the house. Mary Alice went. I'm like going through all of these emotions, and nobody, everybody's pretty. I'm
Right.
not blaming anybody, but everybody, like, everybody's freaking out, right?
Right. Right.
So my mom, I'm hearing, and when you're a little child like that, you're listening, right? So I hear them say my mom went into the house. And at some point, I got the gist of the situation where there was two little boys, and one of the little boys passed away. So now I'm trying to make sense out of that. I'm only a toddler. So
Mm.
a lot of this trauma started at a very early age. By the time now going by the fast forward, by the time my mother came and got me, and I started school and everything, my mom was in and out of toxic relationships.
Mm.
I'm going to say from the age of 5 to about the age of 16, my mom was in and out of these toxic relationships.
Mhm.
Now, pausing for a second to catch my breath. I'm the eldest. I didn't say that. I am the eldest of 7 siblings. So
Wow.
mom had 4 girls and 4 boys.
Boys.
I
Mhm.
am the eldest daughter. Okay.
Mhm.
So 6 of my siblings are younger than me. I had a lot of responsibility at a very, very early age,
Mhm.
and I tried not to despise it. But then what happened? I became the caretaker. I became the caretaker. I mean, caregiver for my mother. I really caretaker back then, but because there is a difference between caretaker and caregiver. So I'm going to say caretaker between my mom and my siblings because my mom was really young then. We're talking like early 70s and all that. She was very young, had children very young. So I found myself worrying about my mother. If she went out, I couldn't sleep until she came home. Now I'm going through this, in junior high school and that, well, elementary school and junior high school. So the trauma, so much damage had already been done by that time, and mainly to my nervous system, and mainly just thinking about like something happens to my mom, we we're probably going to end up in foster care or something.
Mhm.
Who's going to take all these children? I can't take care of all these children. I'm thinking like this at like 10 and 11 years old. I remember another situation when my mom was held at knife point, and I once again tried to protect her. So he had her at the top of the stairs,
Mhm.
holding the knife, stabbing the knife in the wall, put your knife in the wall. and we're all trapped up in the room watching, trying to watch Soul Train, but no, we wasn't really watching Soul Train.
I'm trained.
Remember,
Right.
remember Soul Train? Me
Yeah.
and my little brothers and sisters, man, we love some Soul Train.
Hmm.
But my little brothers and sisters were in the room. Of course, I feel like I gotta protect them. I'm the eldest, okay? And I'm like, if my mom, if this dude kills my mom, what's going to happen to us? So I went for it. I ran. I ducked up under them and ran down the bottom of the stairs. By the time I got to the front door, he threatened to kill my mom. I better get back. You better get back upstairs, because I'm going to kill your mom and your siblings and your brothers and sisters or whatever. So what a burden, what a position to be put in at like 10 years old,
It's cool.
right? Of course, I went back upstairs because I was intelligent enough to know if if I go out this door, I might come back and everybody dead, and I'm gonna feel like it's my fault for the rest of my life.
Hmm.
Okay, so I went back up the stairs. Okay, so my mom was able to talk him off the ledge, fortunately. So this is something that went on a couple of times. Another situation where I heard my mom screaming one night, and I came downstairs, and she had been followed home by her boyfriend, and he had stabbed her like 3 times and left her for dead. Guess who finds her? I'm like, what? What? Everybody else was asleep, huh? Ain't nobody else here but me, right?
Right.
But anyway, probably because I was always zoomed in. Like, is she okay? Is she home? Is she okay? Remember, I'm still was like 10 or 11 at the time, and I just remembered calling the police to get her help and everything. The same person set our house on fire because he realized my mom wasn't he didn't succeed.
Hmm.
So this was like an ongoing process for some time, up like until I was about 15, as a matter of fact, when my mom had started dating a young man. They were a young man who had just got out the military. It was a very short relationship because I think she found out very early this guy is insane.
Hmm.
And not only that, he had attacked her, but she didn't tell us that. So I was really upset with her for some years about that. Like, Mom, why you didn't tell us? Lock the door, warn us about this guy. Because this young man came up with a plan to murder me because he was mad at my mom for breaking up with him.
Hmm.
He came through my bedroom window, attacked me, attacked me. I wake up bleeding from my throat, from my neck, and put me in the hospital for 3 weeks.
Hmm.
Plus some things. Fortunately, my mom, I was able to get to my mom's room. I'm saying God has been really good to me because I know an angel was with me that night. It was just like so much peace, and it's like I heard something say, "Go wake your mother up." I left my room to go wake up my mother, and she I couldn't speak. By that time I was bleeding internally, so I couldn't speak. So only thing I can do was show her my hands.
Hmm.
Grabbed me, ran out the house and got some help. That was pretty. And then the same guy realized that I was still alive and decided he was going to try to finish me off. Now my my mother moved while I was in the hospital, and he followed my little brother home and found out where we lived.
Hmm.
So I'm coming down the street one night with my sister and I mean my brother's girlfriend, and I noticed the car was slowly, approaching us, and it was him. We ran in the house, we took off running, and my mother got a restraining order. And after that, we saw him like in court, but he never said anything to me like, "Why would you think I would do something like that to you?" Or I loved your mom, anything, nothing, nothing, nothing. He said nothing. And guess what? I, because we didn't have much. I grew up in Philadelphia. We didn't have much. He came out the military. So guess who was favored? And he didn't do a day in jail. They said it was all substantial evidence, what they call it, circumstantial
For
evidence.
evidence.
Whatever they found in his car, and everything. They said it was somebody got him off the hook and said it was circumstantial evidence. So
Mm-hmm.
my thing is, of course, I grew up. Now this is going on, and I'm only like 15 years old. I'm thinking the law is going to be on my side. This man tried to take my life. I'm 15 years old. I know he's going to jail. No, they made me look like the bad guy because when I was young, of course, I was traumatized. So I experimented with drugs. I experimented with alcohol. I was promiscuous at times. So of course, they grabbed a hold of that. His lawyer used that. What they got to do with this man that tried to take my life?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so anyway, I grew up with with the struggling with fear, um, some anger, mistrust, low self esteem. And by the time I turned around 19 years old, I had my first panic attack.
Mm-hmm.
I started having panic attacks. Um, Scariest thing ever. Scariest thing ever. And while I was going through all of this, I hadn't been in therapy or anything. Let's just say I was going through it alone. And even though at 19 years old I was with my boyfriend at the time, and we had two children before we broke up 7 years later. But I knew he used to belittle me and
Mm-hmm.
tease me and say things, mean things to me. So I just felt like it wasn't nobody, and I felt ashamed. I
Right.
didn't understand what was really going on with me. And I grew up with a mother that was so independent, that she would not leave. I used to beg her, please leave, take the children and get out of here. We got relatives, in other words, out of town in Virginia. We got like get us away from all of this. And she was like, no, I'm not leaving my house for nobody and all of this. But I'm like, oh my gosh, like you're supposed to keep us safe. So I grew up not feeling safe. And I grew up not feeling safe, and I still have to be aware of my thoughts even today and my emotions even today. Any type of triggers that can trigger, those feelings of not feeling safe. You have a question?
Yeah, and I was going to talk and let them know that's such a touching story, and I mean, just to seeing where you came from to where you are today is amazing. And I want our audience to understand that even though you struggle with some circumstances, success is before you. We talk about this because some people get stuck in a box, as we call it,
Yeah.
um, on the way up to success, but we want to get to the point of seeing how we overcome that success, how we get to that next level, how we can face these trials, tribulations, these situations. But today we can smile because one thing is happening is that transformation happens, and once transformation happens, success starts to begin. And for it. So we understand her, Miss Phelps' wonderful story, but my question is this how Trauma Defeated started? I mean, what made you come and say, I've been through all this all my life. I'm going to start something called Trauma Defeated.
Well, by the trauma defeated, it's over 5 years or so. It's been
Okay.
over 5 years or so, but it was one of them things where by the time the name came up, I was on social media and already beginning to teach what I like to say, what I like to call is recovery tools, teaching the tools to help people and telling my story.
Hmm.
So, but I woke up one morning and I just heard the Lord say, "Trauma defeated."
Mm.
And then I was just walking around and I heard strategist, and I kept hearing strategist. There's like the healthy mind strategist. You've been helping people with their mind, with their emotions, with their thoughts. So I've been a
Wow.
healthy strategist for some time. Trauma defeated. I said God told me trauma is defeated. No matter what you're going through right now. And at that time, tell you the truth, I was probably in a space where I was starting to worry a little bit. And it's like the Holy Spirit said, trauma is defeated. Trauma defeated. So I just put
Trauma
trauma defeated.
Defeated. That's awesome. Trauma Defeated. Folks, I don't want y'all to miss out the opportunity to check out Miss Phillips on Instagram and on social media here, as we're going to have her, as the names come across our broadcast here, so y'all can kind of hear the story that if y'all going through something and y'all reaching for that next level of success, you have to have somebody that gives you the energy. And I'm just so hyped right now. Excuse me if I'm speaking so fast. I get excited when we get to a point where we can see success starting to grow. We can see it starting to move. We can start being able to do some things outside of the norm of not getting stuck in the box. And we can reach some of the goals we set forth to. And once we have that, then we can start to think about, wow, how I'm going to be successful out here in this world, how I'm going to buy my property, how I'm going to own my business, how I'm going to be able to just evolve higher than I can ever imagine
Yeah.
with overcoming these type of issues. So based on the company, what services do you offer out there for our community and for our folks out there?
Well, first of all, one-on-one coaching, but one of my favorite things that I like to do is go into the community and tell my story as a speaker and storyteller. I've been into the schools, I've spoken to nurses, I've spoken to police officers, um, I've spoken to the students. That's one of the things I really love to do, go into the colleges and speak to the students and or the high schools and middle schools and speak to the youth because I tell them different stories, some stories that I haven't even told you, right? I
Mhm.
tell them some of my stories as a youth as well. And what did I learn from those choices and those mistakes and the experimenting with drugs and alcohol and trusting the wrong people and things like that.
Wow,
And
that's amazing, for it and stuff, because we need that in our schools now. We have some young folks that really need to, they're ready to go to the next level,
yeah,
but they don't know how to get there, how to reach them. We have folks still stuck in the mentality of, since I'm in the finance field, of renting. They've been doing it for so long. It's a level of comfort to step to that next level, to get outside the box for one sec. But to hear stories like you, Miss Phillips, to be able to encourage them to know that, hey, I don't have to stay in that same place no more. How do you respond to I got a question. How do you respond to this question? God brought me through it.
mhm. Excellent question. That's
Yeah.
an excellent question because God did bring me through it. I told you that my grandparents on my dad's side helped plant that seed of faith in the very early stages of my life. So even in the midst of being a teenager, in the midst of being a youth and a very young adult and becoming a young mom at about 22 years old, I had my first child. I have four children. I didn't tell you guys that. I'm
Mhm.
a mother of four. And now I'm a my mom
All
of,
right.
of seven. I'm a my mom of seven. But anyway, I was in that toxic marriage and I felt like I couldn't get out. And actually my husband was a murderer. And I knew deep down
Wow.
inside he was a murderer, and that's why I couldn't get out because I was scared to leave and afraid to stay. Um, I think I said that right. I was afraid to leave and afraid to stay. But anyway, the day finally came when he tried to take my life.
Mhm.
Because I had decided to get into therapy, because I decided to get some help, to get into counseling, to start taking some classes on mental health and drug and alcohol. I know he wasn't happy because I started studying to be a drug and alcohol counselor because I figured maybe that's the road God wanted me on. But he said, no, I want you in the marketplace. So it's like, no, I don't want you in the office. Kudos to those who are in the office because we need all the help we can get. But he wants me in the marketplace. That's why I say he likes me to get up and go. but I love that as well. So anyway, about 31 years old, tired, so depressed, sick
Mhm.
and tired of being sick and tired. I was working at Amtrak at the time. I was at my desk and I had had enough. I had cried. I never forget the night before I had cried out to God because I had been trying to stop my husband from drinking, trying to say all the right things, trying to be the perfect wife and everything, and it just wasn't happening. Okay, he was in the streets doing his thing, and I realized, I always knew I wanted to make a difference. I always knew I wanted to change the world. I was thinking like that at 13,
Mhm.
14 years old, going through all that
That's right.
trauma and trauma, right? Like things got to be. things got to change, right?
Right, right.
But at 31, I finally decided to ask for some help. And it was difficult, but I cried out to God and said, God, I've done all that I know how to do. I don't know what else to do. And I asked God to help me. And there was an employee assistance program at my job. And I just went and I asked for help. And all of a sudden I was on this beautiful, difficult, but beautiful recovery journey where my mindset began to shift.
Hmm.
I had began to see how that I had been affected by all the trauma and drama from my past and witnessing so much and actually going through so much.
Wow.
God did it. God did it.
Somebody asked a question. Um, what qualifications and experience should I look for in a trauma therapist? What would what would really stand out to if I'm finding somebody to help me? How should I analyze that?
First of all, I'm not a therapist and I'm not a psychiatrist or anything. I'm a coach. But
Hmm.
what I would do is, I mean, we have Google nowadays, so just begin to look. Begin to if you have insurance, right? If you have insurance, go to call your insurance provider, and make sure that they cover and any type of mental health services, right? And most do now. The word mental health and
Hmm.
depression and all of this stuff is not it's an anxiety, which I have had issues with too as well. That's not a stranger to them. So call and find out who with who like they may have a list. They should have a list and choose one. If one doesn't work, choose another. But the key is to take the first step.
Yeah, to move.
We got to make that right. Begin to try to push the shame away and take that first step.
Should we ask them questions? Should we interview before we start to do a counseling session with them, or?
What I did at one point in my life was nowadays nowadays they let you know what services they offer.
Hmm.
So check and see what services they offer because all therapists and also psychiatrists or psychologists, they're not exactly the same. Some just do maybe couples counseling where some may specialize in the with the youth, or some may
Hmm.
specialize more with anxiety and depression and suicidal thoughts and things like that. So just go to your service provider and then find out when you choose one, find out what services they actually offer.
And this is a question that I had that based on in the mental health field, what is the biggest issue people
Mm.
dealing with trauma? How do they deal with it? I mean, how are we able to reach out to them and let them know that hey, you're going to be successful in this world. Oh,
Yeah,
you're going to overcome those challenges.
yeah. I would say make yourself available, right? Reach out and be willing to share your testimony, share your stories. Reach out and ask for help. That's huge.
Hmm.
And be willing to build, what I did was begin to build up myself spiritually, and begin to build up myself emotionally and learn how to pay attention to my thoughts. Pay attention to my thoughts. The Bible tells us to cast down those imaginations that exalt itself against the knowledge of God. So the awareness is very important. What am I thinking? How am I feeling? How is my thoughts affecting how I feel? And how can I change my thoughts? Be willing to change our thoughts and always look for something to be grateful for because that also helps get us out of our head. So many people struggle with anxiety. So many women. I just read something about in other words, statistics say, or research says. I'll say research says women have more anxiety than men, although men have anxiety too. But we
Right.
have more anxiety as well. And then there can be physical issues such as hormones and things like that. Um,
Mm.
so, so anyway, anxiety is at the top of the list. People are afraid of what's going to happen next. They get caught up in the what ifs, and suppose I can't do this, and fear of success and fear of failure. Sometimes we're stuck in unhealthy belief systems. based on maybe something we were taught or based on something that we experienced in our lives.
Hmm. So tell me this, a trauma therapist, how do I know it's the right one for me? Do I go through a couple of sessions and then I'm like, this person not reaching me, or how
Yeah.
do I know? You know.
Well, well, I'll tell you one of my experiences was and that's another part of my story. But I'll just try to because I know it's not a 2 hour show. So, but anyway, my experiences was after I went through a divorce because I'm also a divorcee. Okay, my first husband, by the way, passed away. I've been married twice. So
Mhm.
my second husband had borderline personality disorder. Long story short, I got out of that relationship and divorced him. I went to see a therapist because I needed to heal from that relationship. And the therapist, he kept, he had like this attitude, and he was telling me that he knew I was going to go back to my husband. And I started getting annoyed with him. I was like, okay, I'm looking at him, being the discerning Christian woman that I am. I'm like, this man has some anger issues towards women. He has to deal with some. He
Right.
needs to take a break and deal
Mhm.
with some of his own personal issues. So we don't want to ignore that based on somebody's title or something like that. The bottom line is, if there's some red flags, even with the therapist, it's okay to just cancel the appointment. Just don't go back. And that's what I didn't do. I didn't go back.
Right.
And it's okay to make. Don't be afraid to make another choice, and it's okay.
Wow. And Gary just asked us a question. He like, what are your favorite types of people who you like to coach? Do you?
Hmm. My favorite type of people that I like to coach, the ones that are listening, the ones that are ready to be, that are teachable. Because we have to be teachable. We have to be ready to learn
Hmm.
something different. The
Hmm.
ones that are teachable, the ones that's willing to listen and try something different, that's humble, those who are humble, they can admit, you know what, the way I was what I was doing wasn't working. So let me try something different, or this jumping
Right.
from relationship to relationship. It wasn't working. I want to have healthier relationships. We need to have a general idea. What do we want?
And that is so important. Another, how do one recognize signs of unresolved trauma in people that they're
Mm.
around or themselves? How,
Mm.
how do I know if, hey, do I got some unresolved trauma, or other people I'm dealing with have some?
Yeah. Well, one can for many anger, suppress anger, passive aggressive behavior, um, gaslighting, or sarcastic, bullying. Pay attention to how we feel. Even I mean, it can even be ourselves. Feelings of shame, shrinking around people, comparing ourselves to other people, not feeling like we're good enough,
Hmm.
avoiding, afraid to make friends, of course, suicidal thoughts, depression, don't want to hang out, don't want to play, don't want to do anything special for yourself. I mean, it's just so much, on that whole mental health path. But pay attention to how you feel. I mean, God wants us to enjoy life, to appreciate life,
Hmm. Hmm.
and
Now,
have a healthy relationship with ourselves. I'm sorry.
right. How do the cultural and society factors influence the understanding and impact of trauma? So
Hmm.
out here in
Sorry.
our culture today, some people might think it's a bad thing to go to therapy. They be like, oh man, that makes me seem, I know from a man standpoint, they be like, man, that's gonna make me seem weak, and I don't want to do it and stuff like that. I think I attend therapy for the sake of growth, to get to the next step of
Yeah.
life, success, reach it. But how do, when you see people, how do they deal with those social factors, when it comes to that? And you probably run into them, and they probably want to say on the side, hey Ramona, I think I got some stuff going on, but don't tell nobody. you know instead
Yeah.
of instead of getting to the point where they're almost like, yourself unable to tell the story.
The secrecy is an issue as well.
Hmm.
The shame, the secrecy is not the same as having healthy boundaries. The
Right.
secrecy is stuck connected to the shame and worrying about what other people think. What is my mom going to say? I mean, trust me, my mom, I have seven siblings. You know, I wrote my first book and my family wasn't too happy about that because I told my story and it's like, no, she didn't. Well, that mom was, but I'm like, I'm telling my story because it's going to help someone else. And when I was speaking at the prison and things like that, it helped a lot of those women that were in jail, incarcerated, because they had been in toxic, dysfunctional relationships and didn't know how to take care of themselves, or they didn't know that they were even supposed to love themselves. Their belief systems was just all over the place when it came to being in a relationship. They were never taught. Many of us were never taught what a healthy relationship looked like. And then we have culture, embarrassing people, shaming people. But I think a lot of people are waking up more now. So words like awareness and mindfulness and
Mhm.
recovery, they're not foreign words these days. So some people are waking up, and some people, hopefully everybody wake up, but some people may not ever wake up. And our belief systems is so important. And we have to be willing to speak up for ourselves.
Right, right, right. And how do traumatic events differ from everyday stressors?
Hmm.
You know, I really, I know something happened down the road that, I can tell, my first accident was in the car after my grandmother passed. My mother had, boy, I still remember Color Sierra, and I thought I can go around that curve, and I had an accident. I sat it there, and I like, oh my God, how did I have that accident in that car that I know my grandmother left?
Oh,
And my mom, and I had to say, I had an accident. It happened, but versus the stress of, oh my God, and my feel like, man, this person is getting on my nerves. How do one tell the difference between the two, or
well,
can one overlay another?
sometimes it's not easy to see, but let's just say depression.
Right.
Okay, it's obvious in certain situations. It's human to be depressed for a certain period of time, maybe a couple of weeks, or just grieving. A person is grieving or something. But if a person is depressed for several months, a couple of months, and it's just not getting any better, and they don't want to get out of the bed, don't feel like going to work, struggling with fear, right? Pay attention to the feelings. The feelings are so important because our feelings are like little messengers that
Mhm.
tell us, well, how am I thinking? Am I thinking when I go out the house, somebody's out to get me? I'm not safe. So once again, pay attention to how we think, how we're feeling, and how are we behaving? What has changed about us? I'll give you a quick short example. Wasn't that long ago. I'm going to say it wasn't even last summer, but anyway, I'm just not that long ago. Maybe in the fall or something like that, October. I was at Applebee's. You know Applebee's, right? So I'm at
Mhm.
Applebee's. I'm by myself, and it's like a Friday night. It's a beautiful night, and I decide I'm gonna get some chicken wings. It's like 9 o'clock at night or whatever. So I leave Applebee's. Two Caucasian men are following me. I didn't know it. The Holy Spirit just said, "There's two men. I mean, you're being followed." I was like, "Oh my God!" I looked in the mirror. So long story short, for a certain period, all of a sudden I noticed that I was beginning to say, I have to get, I have some things to do, but I got to get back here before it get dark. But
Mhm.
so my language has begun to change because before I didn't have a problem going to Walmart, going to the store and stuff by myself, at dark,
Mhm.
So, but my point is, I was beginning to be aware that my language had changed. I had kept saying it. You understand? Just about every day, I kept saying it. Let me get ready, get out of here because it's gonna get dark. Or let me hurry up and get back because it's gonna get dark. And then Holy Spirit said, "You because you've been affected by that and you're not feeling safe, and pay attention when you turn that corner." That's where those two men they followed you and they pulled over right there. So I had to begin to draw closer to God, pray, thank God for keeping me safe,
Mhm.
and ask God to heal my heart. Healing, asking God to heal the heart is crucial. And then being willing to partner with God and go through that healing process is crucial. And
Mhm.
pay and giving and being patient with ourselves and giving ourselves grace and compassion
And
is
forward.
crucial. Yeah, then to being willing to do the work. I'm here today to talk about it because I was willing to do the work. And
Right.
I'm
And
still
that's
and I'm still willing to do the work.
the work.
I have
Put
not
the
arrived.
work in, folks.
I'm not arrived. I don't have no degree hanging up there. She did the work. She's
Right.
done. It's a process. I call it my recovery journey. And
Right.
once it's started, it continues. Like Jesus said, He's going to work on us until
Mhm.
He returns, right? So because test trials and tribulations continue to come, you know.
Yeah, and that's so important that you said we got to do the work. We got to do the work to get to the next success, to
Yeah.
get to the next level of where we. And some say, how can I encourage someone to seek professional help without pressuring them? You know, we might see people out there, and I know, Ramona, you probably seen people out there, and
Um,
you just want to touch them, like, go get some help.
Healed in Jesus' name. Come here.
Right. Getting the oil out and all
Myself. Don't get me wrong.
that.
Don't get me wrong. I've been done to myself. Lord.
Right. I mean, but just to encourage them, because
Yeah.
down the line, it hinders success to be who you
Okay.
fully are and what you're supposed to be.
It does. It really does. The fear, the emotions can really get in the way and really hold us back. And I've been there, done that. Stuff be happening in and out of. But the bottom line is, we were all born with a purpose. So it's all about the story we're telling ourselves. We have to tell ourselves we're more than just our trauma. We are more than conquerors. What does God say about us? That we're
Mhm.
more than conquerors. We're overcomers. So we have to remind ourselves and remind others that you're fearfully, wonderfully, and marvelously made. So regardless of what we've been through, God still has a plan. And the Bible says in Romans 8:28 that all things, that has helped
Together.
me tremendously. All things, everything that we go through, everything we've experienced, the good, the bad, and the ugly, all things work together for our good. So it's about, what are we saying to ourselves? We have
Mhm.
to, remember, David encouraged himself too. So we have to be willing to encourage people. Okay,
Mhm.
it can get frustrating. I think everybody has a family member that was like, "Oh my gosh, if you just get help with that drug problem, or get help with that alcohol problem." But the bottom line is, we still love them right where they are. Tell people the truth. Love them right where they are, but don't beat up on people, because people are already shaming themselves,
Right.
already beating up on themselves. So
Mhm.
don't make matters worse by saying the wrong words to them.
And it's so important that we just continue to encourage folks to be the best version of who you can be
That's
as
right.
you trying to reach that next level. Um, if you think about being a doctor, fireman,
Never.
whatever career you want or whatever you want to accomplish,
That's right.
we have to know that we have to put the work in, and that sometimes it's going to seem lonely, but we need to have that encouragement. We need to be able to know that, hey, we're moving in the right direction. Are
Mm-hmm.
we going to have obstacles? Absolutely.
That's right.
But your obstacles is only part of your testimony to get you to the next step of where you need to be.
That's right. And it's important that we challenge ourselves. It's not easy, because it may trigger anxiety to join a group, to begin to
Mhm.
come out of the comfort zone. But the key
Mhm.
is, we must challenge ourselves and stop attaching and try not to attach danger to the discomfort of change,
That's right.
because sometimes we're fighting the change. It's been said that nervous people hate change.
Yes.
Well, right. So we have to know that, and give ourselves permission. I like to tell people, give yourself permission to heal. Give yourself permission to grow. Give yourself permission to partner with God, because there's some things God is not going to do for us, but He loves us and He's right there for us, helping us with, giving us those little, coaxing us, you know what I mean, and encouraging us, and placing people in our lives. Pray and ask God, who can I trust,
Right.
right? Because we can't grow by ourselves. We cannot heal by ourselves.
Yourselves. And that's so important. And I'm gonna ask you a hard question here. I know you deal with a lot of folks. They might tell you a lot of stuff, but and it can be
So,
depressing. It can drain on you other people's pressure. How do you maintain your support system to just be healthy and to not let that burden you?
Well, healthy boundaries is very important to me, and making sure that I step back and take care of myself. I have a wellness plan. I have a plan to make sure that I'm praying every morning,
Hmm.
listening to worship music. I have a plan. I exercise, so I have a plan. But I also remind myself. I talk to myself. I remind myself, well, that's not my business. I can't change anybody but myself. Let me pray for this person or that person. Let me pull back. And there's some people that can really be toxic that we really have to really totally disconnect from, especially if they're just not willing to do the work. Because sometimes people are just not ready. And
Right.
like I said, I have not arrived. I get a chance to practice every day. That self talk, all of that makes a difference.
Yeah, and that's on.
I hope I answered the question.
Absolutely, because I used to always wonder. I see these folks dealing with even my therapist. I might ask her. I'm like, how do you deal with this all day without being depressed? And she said,
Thank you for prayers.
yeah,
Not
and she
careful.
boundaries. She's
Yeah,
like,
boundaries. One of my favorite words.
it's those boundaries that you got to set to be able to
Right.
continue to do this and know that everything is not your journey, but you helping people through the journey.
Right. And you can like give everybody your phone number.
Yes.
Because people will call and just get in your ear just to vent, right?
Right.
Um,
Right.
you got to be able to say no. That's another one. Not now. Let me get back to you.
And that's a good question. Knowing how to do those things, and the level of success you have at doing it now, how long does that take?
I don't know. As long as they need, I don't know. I don't know how to say and really answer that question. Besides, I'm just going to say, it can vary. It can vary. It depends on the person, right? It can take several months. It can take years. It depends on if we're willing to do the work and if we're willing to, because we have to work on ourselves. The healthier we are, the more we can help other people.
Hmm.
So the key is to focus more so on getting the help for ourselves, doing the work for ourselves, and trust God with the process. Trust God to open doors.
Yeah, and for and I know this is just saying, man. I don't know if you're a coach, but you're a spiritual advisor. Here for it. To get people through it, because Ramona, it's so important that it's a lot of folks in our world that's suffering, even young children, that's going through circumstances and situations that, they need some help. We all do need some help, but for them to be able to have someone to let them know that say, hey, I overcame this. I'm no different than anybody else to
I'm just
overcome this stuff. And it comes with success. It's so funny. I was talking to someone today about home ownership, and they say it's such a burden and stuff. And, you got to worry about this. I like, listen, the burden is when you carrying something you don't believe you can do, for it. And I use this analogy that I can have a boulder rock, and that's a burden because I got to walk it down the street and put it on the other side so it won't be in my way.
Mhm.
But really, it was an accomplishment that I can move the obstacle so I can grow further.
Baby
And
steps.
and through those times of burdens, and that is so important for it. And I just know this, trauma defeated. I'm just moved by that title because it's a claim and it's a calling that you have, and you could have gave up a long time ago. What
Yeah.
pushed you to that next level and said, yo, I'm called to do something?
My love for people. My love for people. my genuine love for people. I care about people,
Mhm.
and no, and I love God, and I
Mm,
and I believe that I have a purpose, and I believe that I'm here for a reason. I,
mm,
but I thank God every day for keeping me because I didn't have to be here. I've almost been kidnapped. I've been other stuff has happened to me, and I know that it's only by the grace of God that I'm still here. So I
mhm,
tell myself from time to time, it's not all about me.
mhm.
That's the key. It's not all about me, but I genuinely want to see people successful, happy, successful, living their, being the best person that they can possibly be. And I want to see everybody go to heaven.
That's it. That's it. And folks, I want to let y'all know we have traumadefeated.com going across the screen. I mean, if you want to reach out, I'm not exposing anybody, and this your own personal. Reach
You
out
know,
to reach out to Ramona. Let if you want to have a conversation of somebody that have made it through success, somebody that's going through it to get to the next level. Reach out, send her an email, traumadefeated@gmail.com. And just have that little conversation. Hey, Ramona, I've seen you
I
on
like
the
talking to people.
podcast. Yeah. But is it a way I can talk to you? This is the issue I'm going through. Send her a little note, because guess what? This might be a transformation to your success, to anything you're trying to accomplish, anything you're trying to get through, to break through to that next level of success. Because everybody has a calling to do some things,
Right.
and guess what? You have to figure out yours.
That's
And it doesn't take a lot. As you see the Instagram, Ramona Phillips 17 coming through. Check out the social media.
on
You
my YouTube. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
YouTube, or I mean whatever it needs to do, because the goal is to see people succeed, get to that next level, understand the challenge we're gonna have for it. And guess what? It's overcomable. We're looking at Ramona right now, where she's been through some situations, but guess what? She's still pressing on. She got a routine. She's still talking to folks. Probably back in her early years, her 2017, she probably never believed she'd be right here today to tell
Yeah.
the story, and to let people know it, and keep going, and write books. Tell us about your books you done wrote. If you can give us a quick
So
synopsis.
here you go. Well, Tear the Veil. It's still on Amazon. It's a volume one and two.
Mm-hmm.
Volume one and two. And my friends, some very close friends and I, we got together and we wrote told our stories. But we were told by our coach to write it in present tense. So that was different. That was interesting. But it became a bestseller in 7 categories on Amazon in 2019, and it's still for sale. But my book was Mama Never Feel Sorry for a Man. Oh my gosh. And sometimes I'm like, God, I should have probably named that something else. But here it is.
Mm-hmm.
Recently, actually, I mean, I wrote this book like in 2015 or 12 or 13 or whatever. But I think 14 or 15. But anyway, my point is, I was surprised it's still on Amazon. But I gave that book away to several women in prison, and I autographed it. I would go back and forth and speak to them and autograph it, and they were like, "You wrote this," but it helped a lot of women. But I know that the people wasn't running to the title. That's my point. So it ain't selling a million copies. Yeah, I think I've said, God, maybe I should have named it something else. I should have waited for another. It was a great title to me at the time because I was just coming out of going through a divorce and all that stuff. But I said,
Mm-hmm.
okay. But anyway, but God showed me. But I showed I had you write it for specific people. Of course, you can't write it for everybody. Anyway,
Right.
no book is for everybody.
Not everybody, but some people. You can learn a little bit from each book.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I just decided to revise it, and I added some other stuff to it. So I got it.
Yes.
I got to put on the back burner, but I'm going to definitely change the title.
So we're gonna go with the Tear the Veil, Amazon Volume 1 and 2.
That's so dope.
Yeah, check out the reading. I mean, it's might be something to motivate you to get you to the next step. Everybody needs a coach.
Yeah,
Regardless, you know how great you are or where it's at. From some of the greatest sports people to those folks that Steve Harvey and you keep going down the line of these folks. They all had coaches.
yeah,
And that coach was not there to just knock them down, but to pick them up because at some point you become at a plateau that you don't move
hmm
and you need to move and elevate. And as you start to elevate, you see success start to come within you. You
yeah,
start to go to the next step of your life of seeing what is happening forward. And that's what we're all about here, sharing the resources and the vitalization of having a great life. And Ramona, before we end, if you can just give our audience some last minute tidbits that might help them get to that next step.
success. I've been hearing a lot about success. Okay. And I
Hmm.
know sometimes people don't hear the word success and they think, I don't know, maybe it to be way up here somewhere and all of these degrees and everything. And we all grow at our own pace and we all have our own gifts and talents, right, that God placed on the inside of us. But for many people, success can also taking that first step, period. Take
Hmm.
success for some people is just taking that first step and getting out of the bed because you're depressed, or reaching out for help because you've been having suicidal thoughts. Remember, we're talking about mental health tonight as well, right?
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
and the bottom line, the Bible says, where the mind goes, the man follows. So we got to get our mind right in order to accomplish anything that God wants us to accomplish, that God calls us to accomplish. That's connected to our purpose, right? Like
Hmm.
I mean, so and bottom line, I'm grateful that I'm here today, that I'm not crazy. And
Right.
that's mainly because of I kept leaning on God. I kept asking God for his help. And when I did get some therapy or get a therapist, right? And right now I'm in different coaching programs with my church. My pastor is Darius Daniels. So I'm in the Daniels Den and I'm in Bible U. And, I connect with different people and I have good support systems. So that's very important to get those good support systems. But remember, success might be for you asking for help right now. And then you get different other levels of success, right? But
Mhm.
get started somewhere. Or God might say, write the book, or God might be telling you to take that chance and go ahead and purchase the
Mhm.
house. Go ahead, whatever God is telling you to do. A lot of times our fears get in the way, right?
Mhm.
A lot of times there's different levels of success, and sometimes success is like just make the call,
Right.
just fill out the application, right?
Right.
And believe that with God, all things are possible.
Hmm.
Just give it a try. Just go ahead and try to finish the course, right?
Hmm.
Right? And be willing to embrace the feelings that come along with change. Like it's okay. And remind yourself, God is with me. I'm going somewhere. Tell yourself, I'm going somewhere.
Somewhere.
It might be a little start
See.
with the little steps, right? Right? Consistency, what they say, consistency compounds. Start
Mhm.
with a little step. Just begin to take the little steps. Today I just replaced the bookshelf. That's a little step. I was working on procrastination. I've been putting that off for so long. I'm like, this bookshelf got to go today. Go.
Right. Right.
Bought a new bookshelf yesterday, took all those books off the shelf today and replaced that bookshelf. So that feels good. That's also how
Hmm.
it builds up our confidence when we take those steps and we know, you know what, today I did that. Something that I know I needed to get done, right?
Hmm. And folks, it's been so great. I want to thank Ms. Phillips for spending some time with us today, giving us that motivation that success is right ahead of us. We have to take that step to reach it. It's right there at your hands, ready to overcome it. This is Creative Financing with JB. This is another wonderful program, another wonderful week. And look forward to seeing y'all next week as well. But just keep moving forward and knowing that success is on the way. Y'all have a great night. Thanks again.
Thank you.